Thank you very much, Jackie. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good evening to you all. And Ronan, thank you very much for the very kind invitation to be here tonight. Uachtaráin tá star ada ag cumann tráchtála Corky. Le breis is stácéad bliain, d'obraig tú chun fios a chur héal na naoine atá gcónaí a Corky agus a cheantar. Bhí ról ríthbhachtach agus freisin, maidir le Corky a dhéanamh mar áit iontach le gnó a dhéanamh, agus gurb mágat as d'obair a dhéanann tú. President, for over 200 years, your chamber has championed Cork and its businesses. Your leadership has underpinned the economic success and the prosperity of Cork and the city and county region. And in doing so, you've contributed enormously to the development of our country. So on behalf of the government and your members, thank you. Interestingly, and coincidentally perhaps, on this day 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago, the 21st of November 2018, I last spoke at the Cork Chamber Dublin dinner. At that time, Brexit was the big risk on the horizon. We had a deal on the table, a really good one and still a very good one, the so-called backstop, which was subsequently not ratified in Westminster. Inflation was less than 1% for the 6th year in a row. We'd recorded a very small budget surplus for the first time since the financial crisis. But of course, within 18 months of that dinner 5 years ago, our lives had changed utterly. We had the arrival of COVID-19, and a year later we witnessed Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. And it's remarkable how much has changed in 5 short years. In the 5 years since that dinner, our population has grown by 400,000 people. And the numbers of people at work has also grown by 400,000 people, something extraordinary that nobody could have predicted at the time, and indeed nobody did. And of course, in that time, the population of Cork approached 600,000 people, probably exceeds it as we speak at the moment, and very likely to reach 750,000 by 2040, and I believe 1 million in my lifetime, and all the opportunities and challenges that come with that. So together we've been through so much, and we have emerged stronger for it. And that's thanks to so many of the people in this room and the people you represent. Ireland has shown time and time again that we can overcome big challenges. The financial crash, Brexit, the pandemic, inflation. And I think what's seen us through all of this is a commitment to an economic model that has served us well for decades. Investing in talent and education and welcoming new talent to our shores. A stable and competitive tax offering. Political stability, a good track record, a pro-business environment, voting for new trade agreements, and guarding our place at the heart of the European Union, advocating enlargement and integration, not less. So I believe one of the biggest risks that we face as a country is any fundamental change to our economic, trade, tax and foreign policies. We simply cannot take our economic success for granted. You know it, I know it, but I can tell you that when it comes to my daily work in the Dáil, our plans for the economy and enterprise policy are rarely, if ever, debated on the floor of the Dáil. And that concerns me, because you can't spend money that you don't have, and wealth has to be created before it's distributed. And it's really important that we should never forget that. I know that you know how much business has had to deal with in the past 5 years. And I hope that Budget 2024 demonstrates that we as a government are committed to backing business and jobs, to helping workers and ensuring a strong economy into the future. It's a €14 billion package, meaning real, tangible help for workers, families, businesses and farmers, while at the same time allowing us to set aside significant reserves for future investment when times may not be as good. And this investment has only been possible because of the hard work of the Irish people and the success and ingenuity of our business community and some good decision making along the way. Apart from broader inflationary pressures, we know that employers are seeing a lot of increased costs at the moment, and indeed some of these costs are driven by government reforms. But I have to say, and be honest with you tonight, that I firmly believe that improved terms and conditions and better pay can go hand in hand with employment growth. Indeed, that's been the case for the past 10 years. And reforms like the National Pension Scheme auto-enrolment, the living wage and statutory sick pay can in the round be immensely positive for our country. Making work pay means more people will work, and in turn they'll have more money to spend in your businesses. But we are going to help employers as these reforms are phased in. And the new increased cost of business scheme being developed by Minister Coveney and Minister Cleary will provide targeted assistance for 130,000 small and medium enterprises, providing financial aid to businesses bearing the brunt of those additional costs. It will alleviate some of the strain caused by surging energy prices. And just to put it in perspective, the budget allocated, and it will be paid out in the new year, is double the amount drawn down in TBES energy supports last year. Also, in the budget introduced by Minister McGrath, to promote innovation, we have a new angel investment scheme that will help those who choose to invest in small, innovative SMEs with the reduced capital gains tax of 16%. And the research and development tax credit is being enhanced, increasing the rate from 25% to 30% and the threshold to 50,000. And of course, for very small businesses, we're increasing the VAT registration thresholds for goods and services by as much as is possible. President, I'd like to take a few moments to talk about housing. And I know it's something that is holding us back economically and socially. I've heard the message loud and clear from chambers around the country that a lack of affordable housing is posing a huge challenge. It's creating an intergenerational divide between young people and older people, between those who own their home and those who have to rent. And it's also making the challenge of recruiting and retaining staff all the more difficult because it's limiting labour mobility. You might find the right person for the job, but can they find somewhere to live? And that's why Cork Chamber has put housing front and centre in your meetings with me and other ministers. It is the biggest issue for your 1,200 members, and I got to hear about it firsthand when we last met back in June in Fitzgerald House. The good news is I think we are making real progress at long last. Just look at the numbers on the ground. The facts are all around us. And look at all the building that's going on in Dublin and now in Cork too. In the past 12 months, 30,000 new homes have been built. That's 50% more than when this government came to office 3 years ago, double the number than when I became Taoiseach in 2017, and 4 times the number when I was first appointed to Cabinet. And I believe a doubling again in the next 5 to 6 years should be achievable, and that would bring us close to 60,000 new homes every year by the end of the decade. We're now building social housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the 1970s. And I can confidently now say that the 2020s will be a record decade in terms of new public housing construction since the foundation of the state. You'll be familiar with our state-owned developer, the LDA. It had a slow start, but it is really getting going now, building affordable homes across the country, such as the 265 homes it's building on the site of St. Kevin's Hospital in Cork, and more to come at Horgan's Quay. And only last Friday, we approved another proposal for 274 apartments in Blackrock Villas. This is the second such scheme approved for Cork and will bring much needed supply for people looking to buy a home for the first time. And I have to say, the one thing that encourages me most is the fact that we're now seeing first-time buyer activity at a level we haven't seen for 16 years. Every week now, 500 individuals and couples drawing down their first mortgage. And I know the Chamber will welcome our recent announcement to double the number of homes eligible for vacancy and dereliction grants, which of course is the quickest and most efficient way to add to our housing stock. Cork is leading the way with 500 grants already applied for to breathe life into old buildings and bring them back to life as new homes, particularly in smaller towns and villages, but also in city areas. We're keen to make sure that the process is as quick as possible, and we want to build more student accommodation on our campuses as well. President, I want to commend Cork Chamber's leadership on sustainability and your efforts to become a climate-neutral city by 2030. I believe we must be the generation that turns the tide on climate change and biodiversity loss. And that's what I'll be saying to other heads of state and government at COP28 next week. We've seen the severe flooding over the past year and the damage caused by Storm Debbie. When I visited Middleton, I witnessed firsthand the devastation caused by Storm Babette and heard from many families and business owners affected. And I know about the damage done in Glanmire too. But also from my visits to Bandon and elsewhere, I know that flood relief schemes, once done, do work. We've done 50 already, and we need to press ahead with the other 90 that are in the pipeline. Climate change is affecting Ireland now, and we have to respond, both by scaling up climate action and reducing our emissions, but also by prioritising adaptation that will make the most difference in practical terms: flood protection schemes, water storage, coastal protection, among other actions. Economically, of course, there are incredible opportunities for us if we act ambitiously and quickly, and we need to think big. Climate change is an enormous challenge, but it's also a really big economic opportunity for Ireland. We've achieved so much when it comes to onshore renewable energy. About 40% of all the electricity we produce now produced by onshore wind, 80% on a windy day. The next step, of course, is offshore renewables, and that will become a reality over the course of the next decade, particularly from 2028, 2030 onwards. And I believe Cork stands to be a big beneficiary. Incredible opportunities if we act quickly and ambitiously. So our vision is to make Ireland energy independent by harnessing our untapped renewable resources, particularly offshore wind. It is our moonshot for the 21st century, something to strive for, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And I believe port areas such as Cork and its hinterlands will be central to the development of this new industry. To make sure we capture the greatest possible economic benefit, Minister Coveney has taken on the role of leading on the development of a new industrial strategy for offshore wind. Successfully making the green transition for business will, I know, be challenging. And I know many companies here tonight are already playing your part. We're determined to add to the range of grants and loans and programs available. For those who are struggling with the changes required, we're here to help. Businesses have been through a lot of turbulence in the past few years, and we're determined to help the most vulnerable as we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And in the same vein, we're keen to help companies go digital through a mixture of financial assistance and training, because the future is digital. Finally, President, I just want to say a few words about balanced regional development. And we are working to ensure that our economic success is sustainable and being felt throughout the country, especially in Cork. It's difficult for any country to achieve. Any small country with a large capital, whether it's Copenhagen in Denmark or Vienna in Austria, struggles to achieve balanced regional development just as we do here in Ireland. But it is at the heart of our government's work. And if it doesn't work in Cork, it's not going to work anywhere else. We shouldn't forget that the combined population of Cork is similar to that of Galway, Limerick and Waterford combined. It is a city of considerable scale and a city region around it. So under Project Ireland 2040, we're making sure that your city is a major beneficiary of our ambitious plans for urban regeneration, with over 400 million announced in projects already. Whether it's the Grand Parade Quarter, including the new city library, the redevelopment of Bishop Lucy Park, and the public realm regeneration works, we want these to be transformative and to add vibrancy to the city with more people living there and more people wanting to visit. On the transport front, we need to make sure that people can get to Cork and around Cork much easier than is the case now. And I'd like to quote a letter to the Examiner, which I read recently. And it reads, "A very large percentage of people in Cork are asking why Cork is not supplied with the transport facilities proportionate to its place in the state, as a centre of population and commerce. Generally speaking, Dubliners can go anywhere within reason on Sundays as well as weekdays. And on weekdays, they're well catered for by trains as well as buses and trams." That's not a letter from last week. It's actually a letter from 1943. And is contained in an excellent book produced by our own Councillor Kieran McCarthy, chronicling the history of the Chamber and its 20th anniversary. But it does goes to show how some things haven't changed for a very long time. And commuting habits and a better transport offering for Cork is now really essential and long overdue. Of course, the huge difference between 1943 and now, aside from the passage of 80 years, is that we're now a wealthy country and we can now afford to do things that other countries were doing in the 1890s. Certainly, as somebody who lives in this city, I'm jealous to think that London and Paris were building their metros in the 1890s, and we're only talking about starting ours now. But we have the money, a multi-year €165 billion national development plan designed to give us the infrastructure that we need, the kinds that will see a step change of investment in transport. So a big project that we're determined to get over the line as a government is the Cork Area Commuter Rail Programme, representing the largest investment in the rail network in Cork undertaken by the state. And Erin O'Darren has announced already that we're switching to electric and a battery electric fleet, and Cork has to be part of that too. As many of you are aware, I recently had the privilege to be at the official opening of the N22 Macroom bypass, and the Dunkettle interchange is due to be completed in the spring. Improving road access remains a priority, and projects like Ringaskiddy and Castlemartyr and Mallow Inner Relief Road remain very much on our priority list. And we're also continuing to implement bus connects in all of our 5 cities, including Cork. We have the plans, we have the money, and we need to focus now on implementation. And I think in many ways that's why Budget 2024 is so important. What we've suffered from so much in Ireland is stop-start investment in infrastructure. And when the crash happened back in 2010, 2011, for obvious reasons, the budgets that got cut the most were in the areas of capital investment, in housing, in transport, new schools and hospitals. But aren't we now paying the price for that? And we need to make sure that we break out of that cycle and it doesn't happen again. And that's why in the budget that we've adopted, we've set aside 2 funds. One to help cover the cost of future pensions and future social care, but one that is there for infrastructure, for transport, for climate, so that if there is another downturn in the future, and no doubt there will be, we can dip into that fund and increase capital investment when it's most needed and not decrease it when we have to. So Uachtaráin is mór an pleasure bheith in éineacht an tróna seo inniu, chun cadrh láidir idir gá ceann dar gachracha iontacha ceiliúra, Guimiha Tanabach Shimsul Díobh Galéir. President, it's been a pleasure to join you here this evening to celebrate the strong relationship between our 2 great cities. The people of Cork and business of Cork can be certain of one thing, that the government shares your goals and shares your ambitions, and we're here to work side by side with you, in partnership with you, in lockstep in the years ahead. Thank you very much.